Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic days wherever across this country or across this great world you may find yourselves. It is Tuesday, and I'll be on Lock It In here shortly. Already done Outkick the coverage. I hope you've read the anonymous mailbag. We got a lot to get to. Michael Avenatti, Donald Trump's nemesis, arrested on the East Coast, arrested on the West Coast, alleged to have defrauded a bank on the Gulf Coast. This is a man who knows coastal communities, especially when it comes to breaking the law. Alleges that Nike is paying players just like Adidas, which would mean all Nike schools are potentially in the mix as well. We've got Jussie Smollett getting off for $10,000 for making up the racist MAGA hate crime. We're going to talk about that. We got Conor McGregor retiring. Bob Kraft pleads not guilty to soliciting a prostitute. And we got a racist turkey vulture that has attacked Stephen A. Smith's office on the campus of Bristol. All that and more we got to break down. But we begin with Nike paying players. Allegations. Now, some people are going to say, Michael Avenatti, you cannot trust him because this is the same guy who went on CNN hundreds of times, made all sorts of outlandish, unbelievable allegations. And then in like a crazy way, none of them were proven true. And now he's being arrested on the East Coast, on the West Coast, and on the Gulf Coast for alleged crimes of a variety of different natures. Now, here is what I think is the key, all right? Extortion does not mean the underlying allegation is not true. In fact, extortion usually means that the underlying allegation has elements of truth in it. If you think about what might have happened, for instance, with David Letterman back in the day, with Amazon and Jeff Bezos and his war with the National Enquirer, with Rick Pitino back in the day, very often, extortion means that there is an underlying truth. That is what is trying to be extorted, the truth from being released to the public. Many of you have been waiting for the proverbial other shoe to drop in this Adidas case. You've been emailing, you have been tweeting, you've been Facebook messaging during Periscope and this show, and you have been saying, wait a minute. How come only Adidas schools are under fire here? How come by and large Nike schools, which are even bigger schools, the UNCs, the Kentuckys, the Dukes, have escaped all of this coverage? Well, maybe that's starting to change. And I think the larger issue that has to be reconciled here is this. Couple of things. One, why do we care? I asked this question on my radio show this morning. Why do you care if a good high school basketball player goes to college and has a nicer car or a nicer apartment or a nicer group of meals than he would otherwise be able to afford? I don't understand why the lexicon and phrase like improper benefits even exists. But I also think we have to stop attacking the NCAA for enforcing rules which, however misguided, are predicated on the existing NBA entrants, right? The NCAA doesn't create the black market here. The NBA does. When you require an asset worth millions of dollars to go to college and play for at least a year, you create an opportunity for a black market to thrive. Would you be willing, if it meant you were going to be able to sign somebody to a contract worth tens of millions of dollars, to give them $100,000 in advance of that? I think most people would say, yeah, that seems perfectly normal to me. What we have created is a black market system that requires issues like this to exist. And I think what we need is a fundamental overhaul of college basketball in particular, but certainly football too, eligibility rules. I've been willing to ask a radical question that most people won't even address. What would a 5-star actually sell for on the open market if you were able to bid on the labor of a 5-star? What is a 5-star actually worth if there were no NCAA restrictions, if the money was going to be taxed like any other salary would be? What would that actually be worth? because I tend to think, especially in the world of football, that a 5-star is actually not worth as much money as you would anticipate, because many 5-stars are total busts. And what would rapidly happen is, if you gave $200,000 to a player and he sucked, you would pretty quickly recalibrate the market such that money would filter down to 3 stars, to 4 stars, and to 5 stars. And what you would do is hedge your bets. You would give some money to a 5-star, but you might like this 3-star that you could buy for a couple of $1,000s. It would be like the stock market. Your blue chip stocks would be going for X number of dollars. Everybody else would be going for less. I think that would actually be better. I would love to see like an open market where everybody could put a website up and a player could say, hey, I've visited all the colleges. These are my 4 favorite. Whoever gives me the most money, I will go play for them. And then just let you follow it on a website like a GoFundMe account. I think it would be amazing to follow, because we really don't know what the open market value would be worth. And I think it'd be hard once a player's already committed, because you're basically investing in undiscovered assets. It's hard to quantify exactly what somebody's worth. Now, if you got a Zion, or you've got a Barrett, or you've got guys that you know are going to be top 10 picks, probably regardless, they would have a different value in basketball. But I do wonder on some level, first of all, you should be able to go straight to the pros. But if you don't want to go to the pros, what's the harm in allowing those guys to actually unlock value for their name? Second part of this, we got to stop saying every time an NCAA tournament discussion begins, these guys are not getting paid. A lot of them, the best of the players, are getting a lot more money than anybody ever recognizes, right? That's what my big takeaway is from the Nike and the Adidas investigations. And it's not just the big programs paying. They have more money and more connections to Nike. But guys, when you go read some of these papers and some of these reports, Creighton was offering $100,000 for a player. If Creighton in Omaha, Nebraska is in the business of trying to buy player services and they are bidding 6 figures, everybody's in this business in a big way. We got to stop saying the players aren't getting paid at all. Okay? So I have no issue with players getting compensated in college. I wish it was just above board. I wish we just knew exactly what they were getting. I think what the challenge would be, that many players would be worth way more in college than they would in the pros. And that's because ultimately what people are paying for is not the name on the back of the jersey, it's the name on the front of the jersey. College athletes are rooted for based on the name on the front of the jersey, not based on the name on the back of the jersey. And those teams are still going to be rooted for even if the players aren't as good. So I think that's a fascinating discussion, but it looks like it could spill into Nike being named in a similar way with everybody out there with Adidas. All right, let's talk about this Jussie Smollett case for a minute. This Jussie Smollett case appears to be an absolute travesty of justice. You have a grand jury which indicts Jussie Smollett on 16 counts of making false statements effectively to police officers. And then you have this crazy DA suddenly come in and say, we will drop all charges in exchange for $10,000. Take a step back. If Aunt Becky or Felicity Huffman had come out and paid $10,000 to eliminate all of the charges against them in their USC case, there would be mass uproar all over the Twitter streets. People would be talking about how justice was for sale, how it was unacceptable. The left wing on Twitter would be in an outrage, perpetual indignation, right? Imagine this. What if Donald Trump had gotten indicted by a grand jury and charged with 16 felonies, and there was ample evidence that he was guilty, and then for $10,000, all 16 felony charges were dropped, and all of the case was sealed? Imagine the reaction that would ensue in left-wing Twitter, okay? My position is this is an affront to anybody who cares about the justice system, okay? 16 felony charges. And they have just disappeared in exchange for $10,000. I want to know what happened here. I want to know what they've got on the DA. I need to know this entire story. And by the way, there are lots of people who are Democrats who are asking this same question, including Rahm Emanuel, the current governor of the mayor of Chicago, and the police chief. This is an unbelievable outrage of a system. They are saying there's even more evidence against Jussie Smollett that has never gone public. If the local Chicago District Attorney's Office is declining to press this charge and indeed releasing all obligation because they don't consider Jussie Smollett to be a threat, then what I need to see happen is the federal government needs to come in and produce their own investigation, and they need to prosecute this case. You cannot send a message that you can manufacture a crime in this country, that you can monopolize hundreds of hours of investigative time, that you can make yourself a victim, and you can then allow that person to continue to claim that he did nothing wrong in his press conference and buy justice for only $10,000. This is not a banana republic. This is not a kleptocracy. This is not some Baltic state. This is not some African kingdom where if you have enough money, you can walk in and buy your way out of justice. When the grand jury indicts you facing 16 felony counts, you need to make sure that you have to answer for your transgressions. Now, you can talk about lenient treatment if he wants to plead guilty to one, he wants to avoid jail time, but guys, he is facing 50 plus years in prison. 50 plus years in prison, and he's just allowed to walk out with a $10,000 fine. $10,000 is nothing. He didn't even have to post his full $100,000 bail. He paid 10% of it, $10,000, and this is one of the most unbelievable things that I have seen in a long time in this country. This needs to stop, and there needs to be consequences for this behavior. We may even need to bring charges against the DA who made the decision to let these grand jury charges be tossed out the window in exchange for $10,000. I'm just saying, needs to happen. All right, Conor McGregor. I got to be fast here. Conor McGregor has retired. No, stop. Somebody said it's like when certain law officers get off. No, it is not. Almost all of the time when police officers get off, it's because a jury declines to convict them, okay? There is a big difference between a DA allowing a grand jury to indict under 16 felony counts and then walking away from it in exchange for $10,000 and a jury of our peers looking at all of the evidence and deciding it doesn't rise to reasonable doubt. All juries are not accurate, okay? Some juries make mistakes, but only absolute imbeciles with no understanding of the criminal justice system would in any way equate those decisions as similar at all. The next grand jury that indicts a police officer on 16 felony counts, and then the DA decides, you know what, I'm not going to prosecute, I will let him off for $10,000, is going to be the first grand jury to ever have this happen in the history, at least modern history, of American jurisprudence. So don't be stupid, all right? Don't be a pussy is our general rule on this show, DBAP. Don't be stupid is another major statement that needs to apply here. And also, don't equate things that aren't remotely similar as the exact same. Just because you are too dumb to be able to understand and comprehend the difference, don't infect your stupidity on other people. Open up a book, step up your vocab, you illiterate sons of bitches. All right? That is the truth. Now, money matters in the United States. Money matters far more than color. But if a white person had been accused of a hate crime like Jussie Smollett, and had gotten off after a grand jury indicted them under 16 felony counts for a $10,000 payment, the Twitter streets would be aflame. There would be people marching in the streets. If you doubt me, imagine what would have happened if this happened just with Aunt Becky. If Aunt Becky got off with a $10,000 fine, there would be unbelievable outrage, and her crime was infinitely less severe than what Jussie Smollett was accused of. She faces much less time in jail. Use your brains, period. All right? The city of Chicago would burn if a white guy was accused of 16 hate crimes, indicted by a grand jury, faced 50 years in prison, and got off with a $10,000 fine. Period. This is true. All right? People get fired up at me because I'm one of the only people in America today who actually applies a consistent standard of logic, regardless of your race, your gender, your ethnicity, your religion, or who you want to have sex with. I think everybody should be treated the exact same. That's my goal. That is my goal every single day. Look at the facts, treat everybody the same. This is the truth. Okay? Period. If you have a scintilla of intelligence, look inside your brain and know it to be true. No, it doesn't. Some of you are so dumb that I have to block you. All right? You are blocked because you're too fucking stupid to be able to continue to appear in my show and comment. Again, if somebody on a jury decides not to convict somebody, that is understandable, right? You might not like it. You might not agree with it. But a jury makes decisions as to whether or not crimes have been committed in America today. A grand jury is impaneled specifically to make sure that the DA doesn't get it wrong and that a jury would agree there is sufficient evidence to bring charges. To allow someone off for $10,000 is an absolute outrage based on what we know. Use your brains. Don't be stupid. All right, Conor McGregor. I don't think he's actually going to retire. I think this is entirely a negotiation ploy. He went on Fallon last night. He said that there was no doubt at all in his mind that he would fight again in July. And then he goes on the Twitter machine late in the night and says, you know what? I am going to retire. This is 1 billion% an attempt at negotiation. He thinks that he is going to be able to hold the UFC hostage because they desperately need him to fight. And you know what? He may be right. He's still the biggest draw in the history of the UFC, and certainly the biggest draw in the modern UFC. I don't think there's any doubt about it at all. This, in and of itself, Conor McGregor is not going to retire. He will fight again. I hesitate to even talk about fighters and deciding to retire because they retire and then they disappear, right? That is the truth, okay? Beyond a shadow of a doubt, I think he will be back. Finally, Robert Kraft has pleaded not guilty. Robert Kraft has pleaded not guilty. I said that I think, no pun intended, he's going to beat these charges. When you look at the evidence here, I don't believe that Robert Kraft was able to be stopped and asked for his ID. I also don't believe that Robert Kraft was going to be able to be proven to have solicited a massage. If you look at all these allegations here, I think what happened in this case was they were waiting for a famous person to draw attention to their investigation. They tried to scandalize it by saying it was a sex slave operation. And the reality is, when all this evidence is analyzed, they are going to have to toss the stop. They are going to have to toss the video. And Robert Kraft is going to beat these charges. It will be a happy ending for Robert Kraft, and one that he will have to pay to his lawyers a pretty penny for. All right. I love all of you. I got to go and knock out my television show now. I'll be on FS1 in, let's see, about 23 minutes. 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central, 2:30 Mountain, 1:30 Pacific. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. Lock it in next. We're going to give you some gambling picks, get you ready for the Sweet 16. Kisses, DBAP unless you need to SBAP. Federal charges against Jussie Smollett need to happen now. My name is Clay Travis, and this has been Outkick the Show. Love you. Thank you, Facebook.